There is such a creature in the world. It was discovered by a few people, but it does not officially exist. We call this creature the unidentified mysterious animal. Hello everyone, welcome to SE Tech Talk. Brazil is one of the largest countries in Latin America, occupying about half of the territory of South America. With complex historical elements, the impact of multi-ethnic immigration, and its collision with local Indian culture, Brazil has formed its unique identity. The core of its culture is Portuguese, blended with multiple ethnic characteristics and a rich human history. At the same time, the Amazon River in the northwest of Brazil provides the country with abundant natural resources. In the rainforest, with its extreme biodiversity, there are biological sightings that go beyond people's understanding. These mysterious phenomena have gradually added legendary colors to the deep green hell of the Amazon. What I want to share with you this time is the origin of one such legend. In Brazilian folklore, there is a story of a giant caterpillar known as minhocuçu. Minhocuçu is usually described as a huge, caterpillar-shaped creature with hard black scales all over its body. It has a nose like a pig and two moving horns on its head. Its length is said to range between 65 and 260 inches. This significant variation in size might stem from people's exaggeration of the legend or visual errors. According to the story, minhocuçu lurks in the rainforest, attacking cattle and horses and dragging them into the water. The monster is said to start from swamps, digging in its path. These huge caterpillars can allegedly even change the direction of rivers or destroy people's orchards. The roar it occasionally makes can be heard from a few miles away. Some people also describe minhocuçu as a huge fish or snake. There is a wide range of legends about this creature in Brazil, Uruguay, Nicaragua, and many other Latin American countries. According to the 1847 French archaeologist Augustin Saint-Hilaire, in the Natural History Annual Report and the magazine, the minhocuçu of the Guiana people was recorded. Minhocuçu is believed to originate from the Zengi word for minhocuçu, though in Portuguese, the word only means autumn. A guide told him that this creature lives in the Goiás, in the Paranda Alanda Lake and Fia Lake. Its shape is very similar to that of autumn, but its body is larger, and its mouth is different. It is huge and clearly visible. Usually, it won't float to the surface, but when it bites, it will suddenly break out of the water, tearing the abdomen of animals and dragging them to the bottom of the lake. German biologist Fritz Müller was one of the first scholars to study minhocuçu. He immigrated to St. Catherine, Brazil, in 1852 and became a local doctor and biologist. While studying the history of fake reptiles, he noticed a local legend about a strange insect. The body length of this animal is said to be 50 meters, and it is 5 meters wide. Its entire body is covered with scales. It is so strong that it can easily pull up a huge pine tree. The tunnel it dug changed the direction of the river, turning the dry land into a bottomless swamp. Gradually, Dr. Müller began to contact some biologists. Since then, he realized that the minhocuçu is not just a legend. In 1877, Dr. Müller introduced his collection of information about the minhocuçu in a series of German zoos. However, the German translation software at the time was not very accurate. As a result, in February 1878, the British Journal of Natural Sciences summarized the above articles as a main reference to share with readers the history of minhocuçu. Dr. Müller mentioned in the article that about 8 years earlier, around 1869, a man named Francis Waller, about 10 kilometers from the city of Lax on the bank of the Cavilas River, saw a huge animal lying on the shore. It was almost 3 feet tall with a nose like a pig. He couldn't tell if it had 4 legs. Waller didn't dare to face the monster alone, but when his neighbors came to help, the monster had already disappeared. When the creature left, it left behind a trace. A week later, someone found the trace 6 kilometers away from Lax. The trail extended to a pine tree and then to a deeper swamp. Also, in the 1970s, an engineer named Odebrecht, while searching for the way to St. Catherine, saw some twisted traces. The inside of the traces was very complicated and confusing. It was easy to get lost. He couldn't imagine the origin of these deep tracks. However, he later came to believe they were caused by the mysterious minhocuçu. According to the article, about 14 years earlier, In January 1864, a resident of the Cavilas River region, Antonio Blanco, found the road destroyed while on his way home. The mud was thrown to the ground, and many twisted ditches were formed. The origin of the ditch was a stream, and its endpoint was a swamp. The length of the stream was about 700 to 1,000 meters. Since then, the stream has flowed through this ditch. According to Blanco and his son, hundreds of people from the surrounding area checked the traces left by the minhocuçu. The pine trees along the way were pulled out, and one of the tree barks was broken by something. One night in 1849, a resident of the Majestic River in Parana, Brazil, heard a storm outside. It sounded very close, but the sky was full of bright stars. The next morning, the resident found that a large piece of land had been destroyed. The area was full of deep ditches. The origin of these ditches was a plain called Cerrado, and the other end of the ditch was connected to the Majestic River. 3 years later, in 1852, a woman named Labino Santos came to the area and discovered the ditches. She found that these ditches had been dug by two animals. Their width was about 2 to 3 meters. Mr. Labino told Dr. Muller that in the same area, many people had witnessed unusual events. For instance, a black woman once went to the pond in the morning and found it badly damaged. Not far from the pond, she saw a huge monster moving on the ground. She called her neighbors, but by the time they arrived, the creature had disappeared, leaving only footprints. The creature likely jumped into the deep water. In another example, a young man saw a huge pine tree collapse as he was walking. There was no wind at the time. When he reached the tree, he found the ground shaking. Soon, he discovered the source of the shaking: a huge black caterpillar, about 25 meters long, with 2 tentacles on its head. Mr. Labino also mentioned that in 1849, while traveling in Ulaanbaatar, he heard of a dead minhocuçu. It had been trapped and squeezed by rocks and couldn't escape. Locals said its skin was as thick as pine bark, and its body was covered with scales. On March 10, 1866, a Nicaraguan newspaper recorded a letter from Belino, Montenegro. In the letter, Montenegro wrote about being on his way to Cancadia, Mexico, where he heard about a huge snake. When he reached the area, he saw the snake's footprints. In 1861, a farmer planted some fruit trees on flat land. By 1863, the ground collapsed, and a large stone was uncovered. No one knew the cause, as there was no underground water in the area. Gradually, the trees began to loosen. A huge pine tree was overturned, and the rock was thrown out of the ground. By December, people attempted to block the road between Xixiguas and Bazenleifer, but the ground continued to crack. When Montenegro arrived, the last ditch had just been created. 3 days later, 2 tunnels appeared in the ground. Locals reported that a wild animal had pushed a pine tree down, but it escaped quickly. One set of footprints led to a nearby pond, while another went through a 4-meter-deep rock and into the pond. Montenegro observed truncated roots and a 1.5-ton rock that had been pushed aside. Judging by the soil, these animals seemed to have scales. He estimated the creature's length to be up to 40 inches, with a height and width of 10 inches and 5 inches, respectively. The locals called this creature Cielp, which means snake in Spanish. There are many records of minhocuçu, but most are from unknown newspapers or scholars' papers. For some folklorists, the most important question is whether this creature is real. If minhocuçu is a vivid description of natural phenomena, such as earthquakes, then it represents a form of extreme, hellish natural worship. On May 9, 1887, the famous British biologist Charles Darwin sent a letter to Dr. Muller. In the letter, Darwin raised the question: could the so-called underground giant be an imagination of the locals after seeing the skeleton of a large animal embedded in rock? He compared this to how people of the High Bridge mistakenly thought a skeleton resembling a rabbit was a blood-like animal. Of course, this statement has been refuted by some modern cryptozoologists, as it does not explain the actual records of the creature. American cryptozoologist Professor Charles Arment, in a review magazine of the North American Botanical Society, also commented on the minhocuçu. This kind of animal is too hard to figure out. Maybe it's extinct now, or perhaps it never existed. But if the legendary minyak is purely fictional and represents some inexplicable natural phenomena, why hasn't it appeared until now? What has replaced the so-called minyak phenomenon? In the world of cryptozoology, the speculation about minyak is even more serious. The first French biologist to mention minyak, Augustin Saint-Hilaire, stated in an article that although the so-called minyak has a round body like an eel, it is a real fish. Dr. Saint-Hilaire believes that some kind of large South American lungfish may be the most reasonable explanation. The lungfish itself is a long animal, and its eyes could easily be misinterpreted as nostrils. The creature's tentacle-like features might originate from the chest fins of the lungfish. In addition, the lungfish buries itself in mud in a dormant state, which could explain the legend of digging tunnels. However, the biggest issue with this theory is the claim that the creature drags animals into the water. For this to be true, the creature would require an enormous body and great strength. While some primitive lungfish species have scales, no specimens of such a large lungfish have been discovered to date. German physicist Emil Barth wrote in his 1891 Nature Science discussion that if this animal does not have legs, then it must crawl like a worm. Its scales might allow it to move underground while providing sufficient grip. If the pig-like nose and tentacles are credible, they could remind people of other similar crawling animals. Professor Bernard Schwarman believes that what Dr. Barth refers to could resemble a desert-dwelling turtle, but he argues it is more likely to be a minyak, possibly an ancient species. This is an extinct large animal of significant knowledge and mystery. According to fossils found, this species appeared in the late Stone Age about 38 million years ago and persisted into the early New Age around 11,000 years ago. They are close relatives of modern lungfish but had larger, shell-like claws made up of hundreds of skeletal structures with short limbs. The largest specimen recorded to date is the minyak. His body length is 12 inches, with a height of 4 inches and 11 inches. The key point is that this species has been found in Brazil, Uruguay, and many other countries. Professor Schwarman, in his 1858 book Finding Unknown Animals, noted that the minyak had strong claws and armor. Its body size correlates with the dimensions of the tunnels it excavated, which could cause significant ground subsidence. Minyaks may have been amphibians, capable of moving through narrow streams and rivers. Despite their heavy armor, they might have floated to the surface. However, whether minyaks were amphibians remains a mystery, as does their ability to dig caves. Ancient biologists have yet to reach a consensus on this topic. The cryptozoologist Dr. Carl Schuk offers a different perspective. He theorizes that minyaks may have been large amphibians, possibly related to the rhomus, a carnivorous amphibian. These creatures have small or non-existent eyes, a round body, and a bullet-shaped head. With over 200 known species, most are found in South America, Africa, and Asia. Large amphibians, such as the Columbian Thompson, can grow up to 5 inches in length and resemble snakes. Dr. Schuk believes that amphibians common in South America share similarities with the minyaks, including their appearance and predatory behavior. Some amphibians have horns or ears, although these features may not be prominent. They also possess silver fins, and larger species may have claw-like features resembling the descriptions of minyaks. Additionally, amphibians are known for attacking the abdomens of their prey, aligning with minyak descriptions. This theory was later supported by Professor Sewell, who eventually abandoned earlier speculations. From my personal perspective, while all information about minyaks and their traces originates from the 19th century, the lack of photographic evidence due to the time period adds to the mystery. As Professor Sewell noted, their disappearance raises questions. What caused it? Minyaks are not associated with any specific religious beliefs or historical cultural issues. The 19th century wars in South America led to widespread habitat destruction, which may have contributed to their extinction. We have reason to believe that some species, like the minyaks, disappeared due to war and environmental degradation. Minyaks were likely one of the most significant species to ancient South American indigenous peoples. This is why I urge everyone to protect wild animals and the environment we all share. For those who hunt or kill animals recklessly, the loss of such creatures is a warning to value our planet's biodiversity. As the saying goes, the unknown is always greater than the known. that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more intriguing stories about mysterious creatures and hidden biology. See you next time.